lesson this week, the weekly Sabbath School lesson number 7, which is quite interesting. It goes on to teach us about the 7 trumpets, what they mean, what's going to happen, and along with the 7th trumpet, which hasn't rung as of yet. Whoops. I think I'll go this way. And it talks about all the things that are happening and going on. I mean, this book is truly amazing. If you are not connected or hooked up with a group with the quarterly Sabbath School lesson, then I think you guys are just missing out on a lot. Lesson 7 really talked about some very interesting things. The prayers of the saints was one of the topics. Sunday's lesson. It goes on to the meaning of the trumpets, which is very important, and how they still apply to what's going on in Earth's history. You've got on Tuesday the angel with the open book. Thank you. Wednesday's lesson is talking about the eating of the scroll. I mean, it's not a literal eating, but it talks about John's bittersweet experience in eating the scroll, which is a representation of one of the prophecies in the book of Daniel related to the unsealing of Daniel's end-time prophecies. It also goes on to talk about, I guess it's paralleling the 2300-year prophecy, and you can go on to Wednesday's lesson, which is dated February 13th, and go through it and get a deeper understanding. I have to go through these over and over again. I'm just a slow learner, but it doesn't hurt because it helps me to retain as I study on with the Word of God, and not just prophecies and not just what has happened in the past, but what's going on right now here today in this world. One question came to my mind as I studied this lesson. It brought me back to that all-encompassing question about people who die and then it's like instantly they're in heaven. And we know that's not the case because the Bible doesn't even teach that. But it was touching on the point of when Jesus returns for his righteously received, whether those are in the grave or not. But I guess I better leave. My understanding is, and I'll go through it again because I have to for my own clarity and purposes of understanding. But the connection that is made between Jesus' return, again, that question, once you die, you're automatically in heaven. And I know that's just not the case just by reading the Word of God. It's talking about Jesus when the 7th trumpet has rung. Jesus will come out of the clouds with all of the angels, not a third of the angels, not a portion of them. My understanding is all of the angels will be accompanying Jesus when he comes for his redeemed. And I think the Bible sometimes uses the word cloud or clouds. I'm not sure if the clouds are literal or it's just something portraying all of the angels that are accompanying Jesus as he returns to retrieve his righteously saved. And it also talks about those who have died and are righteously saved will wake up. Now, why does all of that happen if the majority of the world thinks and believes that the moment you die, you're in heaven? And I try to pose this question out to people, just in general conversation, outside of the Seventh-day Adventist circles, because the majority of them just have this fascination that their loved ones or their friends, family, whomever, they're already in heaven. And I guess all I can do is use the Bible to explain some of these realities and where people are getting it wrong, and let the Bible be the explanation. Because at the end of the day, it's not that they're wrong and I'm right. It's they're wrong and the Bible is correct. I don't want to put any light on myself, but I have to always use the Word of God to back up anything I say. And for me, because I'm a slow learner, sometimes it's very hard, but it makes sense. Because if they want to argue, they're either arguing with Jesus's words or the Bible itself. I'm just trying to lead people to the truth, or give them a biblical explanation as to why what they're saying is wrong, and here it is, full proof in the Word of God. It's just not my intent to pick a fight, to debate or argue with anybody, because for one thing, I don't need to defend God. He can defend himself. He's a big God. But I want to learn the truth, and I want to share that truth. And that's just one of the things that came to my mind doing the lesson this past week, lesson number 7. You know, there's a lot of truth mixed with lies out there, which then puts people on dangerous ground. It confuses people, makes them uneasy, makes them a fence sitter. So, and I will say this, if you're studying the Sabbath School lesson, the author who writes these lessons, they're only humans, just like you and I. And it's good to know our Bibles, because then we can kind of keep them in check with what they're saying and what they're teaching. I'm a big fan of Hope Sabbath School. Doug Batchelor's, the study hour. Every week I watch both of those programs, and I find from my own experience that Central Study Hour seems to be they really dig in deep, and it's just something that I recommend, that if anybody has trouble with these Sabbath School lessons, or you don't study in a group and it's hard to study alone, Hope Sabbath School and Central Study Hour are probably the two biggest things that I find helpful with me if I'm not studying with a group of people.